Welcome to another episode of the Ginger ROAMance. Here, you'll hear anonymous stories from travellers all over the world. Real submissions from real people. Tales of connection, romance, passion, heartbreak, friendship, and love in all its forms. Because every kind of love deserves to be told. This week on the Ginger ROAMance, we share a soulmate connection set in Oaxaca, Mexico. This is a travel love story about timing, resilience, and the moment you stop trying to control the outcome and simply choose each other anyway. Let's get into it. I wasn't meant to be in Mexico that long. I'd planned 1 week in Oaxaca, maybe 2 if I liked it. It was one of those trips where I told everyone I was figuring things out. But really, I was just tired of my life back home. Same routine, same people, same conversations that never went anywhere. Oaxaca felt different. Not in a dramatic, life-altering way at first. Just warmer, looser, like no one was watching you too closely. I met him on a Tuesday afternoon in a café that I only went into because it started raining. I was sitting there waiting for the rain to pass, and he asked if he could share the table because the place was packed. His Spanish was better than mine, but his English wasn't perfect either, so we kind of met in the middle. It made everything slower, more intentional. We talked for maybe an hour. Nothing crazy. Travel, where we were from, what we were doing next. We are both avid updaters of our travel lives on Instagram, so we followed each other as a way of keeping in touch. But I remember walking back to my Airbnb thinking, that felt easy. Too easy. I didn't expect to see him again, but the next day, he messaged me. We met again that night, then again the next day, and then it just kept going. There wasn't a moment where it became a thing. It just quietly turned into something. We'd explore during the day, markets, viewpoints, random streets we had no reason to be on. And at night, we'd sit somewhere simple, drink something cheap, and talk properly. Not surface level stuff. Real things. By the end of the first week, I realised I wasn't thinking about my next destination anymore. By the second week, we extended our stays. And by the third week, we both knew. We didn't say soulmates or anything like that. It was more like an understanding. Like, this matters and we don't want to mess it up by pretending it doesn't. But my flight home was booked, and so was his. So we decided to try long distance. I remember sitting at the airport thinking, this is either going to fall apart really quickly or completely change my life. There was no in between. The first few months were actually okay. We made time, we called constantly, we planned visits. It felt like we were working towards something. But after about 6 months, reality started creeping in. Time zones, work, money, the pressure of not knowing when we'd actually live in the same place. We started looking at options. The original plan was for him to move to my country. It made the most sense on paper. But the visa process, it was a nightmare. Delays, rejections, requests for more documents, waiting periods that stretched for months with no clear answers. It became exhausting. There was a point where we had to ask ourselves a really hard question. Are we actually trying to make this work, or are we just holding on because we don't want to let go? And that's when we made a decision that, at the time, felt slightly unhinged. We chose a third country, somewhere neither of us had any ties to, somewhere we could both start fresh. It wasn't romantic when we made this decision. It was practical, almost clinical. We asked ourselves, okay, where can we both get visas? Where is affordable? Where can we build something without constantly fighting systems that don't want us there? We landed on Portugal. Neither of us had been, we didn't speak the language, we didn't know anyone, but it gave us a shot. After the slightly less tricky visa process, we both packed up our lives and moved. Separately at first. I arrived a month before him. I remember standing in this tiny apartment, surrounded by suitcases, thinking, what have I done? There was no comfort there, no familiarity, just a decision I had committed to. When he arrived, it didn't feel like a movie moment. There was no romantic running towards each other. It was much quieter than that. He walked through the door, dropped his bags, and just held me. And I think that's when it hit me. We actually did this. The first year living together wasn't easy. Not because of us, but because everything around us was new. Jobs, language barriers, figuring out how to exist in a place that wasn't built for either of us. We had moments where the stress spilled over, where we'd argue about things that weren't really the issue. But underneath all of it, there was this steady thing. We didn't question us. We just questioned everything else. And that made a difference. Year 2 felt lighter. We had routines, friends, and a sense of normal life. It stopped feeling like a temporary experiment and started feeling like home. By year 3, we weren't talking about if anymore. We got married in a small ceremony. Nothing big, just a few people who had become important to us along the way. And now, I'm pregnant with our first child, which still feels surreal to say out loud. Sometimes I think about that rainy Tuesday, how I could have easily just went back to my Airbnb, or said no to sharing a table, or not have replied to his message. And none of this would exist. I don't think it was about fate in some big dramatic sense. I think it was just two people choosing not to walk away from something that felt right, even when it became inconvenient. And then continuing to choose it, over and over again. That's where the episode ends, but not where my thoughts do. The thing I like most about this story is that besides the grand gesture of moving to a new country, it's just two people quietly deciding, again and again, not to let logistics win. She said they never said soulmates, but it sure sounds like it to me. So, a question for you all. Do you think we are actually looking for soulmate level love? Or are we only open to it when it arrives wrapped in ease? Because this kind of connection didn't stay easy. It stayed chosen. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll catch you in next week's episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure you're following along to keep up to date with weekly stories that will inspire, entertain, and maybe even make you fall in love with the idea of love itself. Got your own romance story and want to be a part of the Ginger Romance community? Check the notes for details on how to submit your own.